welcome to Rob from the Internet Talks About Beer, a show where we discuss different styles of beer, beer history, beer flavor profiles. We give shout-outs to breweries we think make exceptional beer, and we talk about whatever else comes to mind during the course of our conversation. I'm Rob, and if you like this style of entertainment that I'm trying to put out there, it'd be greatly appreciated if you would like this video, maybe subscribe to the channel, maybe tell your friends. We've all got friends who need to know more about beer or want to know more about beer, so why not tell them about this show? All right, so let's get started. Today, I am joined by an internet friend named Chance, who apparently is shooing somebody out of his recording area. So, hey, Chance, if you would tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got into craft beer, and what you do when you're not talking to people like me about craft beer and shooing people out of your room.
Oh, my apologies. I said, hey, I'm starting recording. Shut the door. I just had one of my daughters appear. Of course.
Of course. I mean, kids,
So, and left the door open, of course. But,
of course.
yeah, I am actually, thanks for having me on, by the way. This is awesome. I got into craft beer, well, that's a long story, but I'll start out with this. I'm sporting the old Rainier hat because I found that this year and absolutely thought it was too cool a hat to pass up, even though I don't necessarily love Rainier beer.
Yeah, it is a nice looking hat, that's for sure.
I am when I'm not talking to people on my podcast or the Strive Seek Find podcast, not video, just audio and simple at that, where I talk about everything from people's passions. I've talked everything from people making fishing poles to decision making to telling stories about how that I find amusing on how I raise my kids, like trying to convince my oldest that pixie sticks were actually made of ground up pixie, which I had a good time doing. I told her I'm not paying for therapy when she gets older. So I guess I hope it turned out.
That's right.
In real life, I'm in year 27 in the educational field, and it both seems like a lot shorter and a lot longer at the same time.
It depends on the day.
Depends on the day. I am craft beer. I wasn't a beer guy I wasn't a beer guy in college. Yeah, I was a cheap beer guy in college. I was the guy pulling 50 count and change out of the cushions and buying Keystone Ice so that I could have a 6-pack of Pounders for the weekend.
Keystone Ice.
That got a little older, and I ran across a couple of craft beers, and then I met a buddy of mine who said, "Hey, we're going to Deschutes. We're going to Deschutes Brewing in Bend, Oregon." And so I take a brewery tour, I try a bunch of their beers, had a great time. And that was kind of my gateway drug, so to speak. I loved what they were doing. I loved their British style ale. I loved their summer ale. There was like 4 or 5 beers that I loved. Now, in retrospect, right now, there's maybe one other than their Jubile Ale, which I buy like clockwork every year and drink. And if I can find it, a bottle of their Abyss, which is
the Abyss series, man. That was the very first beer of theirs I ever tried, and it was the one that was like, yep, okay, these guys know how to make beer.
Oh, they're awesome. But then they've like a lot of breweries, the taste changed, and I haven't. So everybody that's making a dozen IPAs, I'm like, there's not much I'm going to be drinking at your place because I can't handle an IPA anymore.
Yeah,
it tears me up too much, and so I went from there to. I've just started exploring. I really have a thing for I like finding breweries all over the place. We try to find, whenever we go someplace, try to find a couple that I haven't tried, but I have a real fondness for Oregon breweries. And what I'm drinking tonight's a Pilsner out of Hood River from Freem Family Brewing. I've got, Freem is probably my favorite brewery in Oregon right now. Though I'm always fond of Full Sail, and I don't think of it as an Oregon brewery, but Terminal Gravity. Just a variety. there's a bunch here in the Boise area, a whole bunch of the breweries that have taken off, and I've definitely got my opinions on those. I'll probably share a couple of my favorite pills as we talk about this, but that's kind of where it came from. I jumped in with a friend, and we ended up in a brewery, and I opened up a new door for myself I'd have never imagined.
Excellent. I mean, that's the best way to do it. Organically being introduced to craft beer is probably the best way to be introduced to it. When you have someone that's like trying to force you to try something, you're going to be more opposed to it. But if you're like, hey, we're going here, you want to go and check it out, and you're like, yeah, okay, I'll give it a try, and then you find out you actually like the stuff they're making. It's a totally different experience. I mean, I've been into the beer scene pretty much as long as I've been alive. I'm from a German and Irish family, so beer was a big part of any family gathering. I had an uncle who I lost touch with over the years, but last time I talked to him, he was a brewer at Coors in Golden, Colorado. So beer is in my family. So it's been one of those things that I've always been around beer. I've always kind of liked beer. I went through a phase where I stopped drinking it for a while, and I switched over to just strictly cocktails and hard alcohol. But then I came back to beer, and I'm a brewer. I've been brewing at home for the last 10, 15 or so years.
Wow.
And thought about opening a brewery, and then thought better about it, and so I just brew at home and talk about beer.
Yeah, I've never had the guts to try to home brew. I have one friend that I thought should open should open a brewery, and I thought he was on that route. He decided to instead probably saved his life because the market was not in a good place here at the time. But he went forward and invested in a brewery instead, and he's happier because he has more time with his family than he would have otherwise. And
right.
and his kids are at the age where he doesn't have a lot of time to brew right now.
Yeah. No, my wife and I were going to open up a brewery, and we were at the stage where we were looking at properties, and we had looked, we had a couple of different places we were looking at getting leases on and things like that. And then we sat down and started talking about it, and we're like, well, if we do this, we're not going to be able to take vacations or do any traveling for at least 5 years as we're trying to get this up and running. And do we really want to do that? And then we're looking at the outlay of money that you have to here, at least here in Ontario, it's kind of prohibitively expensive to start a brewery. And we decided against it. And I think it was a good idea because literally with the time frame that we had laid out, if we had gone forward with it, would have been opening right in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and it would have been a bad time to open a brewery.
Definitely. I actually sat through one of the local places that survived, and I'm pleased about it. Next town over, and they were doing a investor's pitch, and I went to it because I'm always curious, and
Right.
just listening to how they survived the pandemic and what it actually cost them was like the fact that they were still standing there and still putting out their product was amazing to me at that point.
Right. So you alluded to this as earlier when we were talking. Tonight's episode, or today's episode, depending on when you're watching this, is about Pilsners. So I will be drinking one from not local to me, but local-ish from Toronto area, Junction Craft Brewing. This is the Junction Craft Pilsner. It's classic German Pilsner, comes in at 4.5%. So I imagine it's going to be, nice and straw colored with a nice malty sweetness and have that malty and kind of floral aroma to it. So let's take a look. For people who are interested, the proper glassware for a Pilsner is a fluted style glass. I don't have a traditional fluted style glass. I've got more of this modern flared glass. And proper serving temperature is 40 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 4 to 7 degrees Celsius for those of us who live in the metric world.
You mean those places that aren't stubborn?
Yeah, that's right. Of what is it, 185 nations in the world, there's 3 that still use Fahrenheit.
We like to be right. I'll say it.
There's nothing wrong with Celsius or Fahrenheit, depending on what you're doing. Fahrenheit is a little more accurate because the measurements are smaller, but Celsius is a lot fucking easier just because it's base 10. 0 is freezing, 10 is cold, 20 is nice, 30 is hot, 40 is, oh my God, it's hot.
Yeah. Now, instead of, hey, it's 32, you better put on your jacket.
Yeah. Here, hey, it's 32. Let's hop in the pool.
I already repped, I think, what I'm drinking tonight. I'm drinking that the Freem Family Pilsner. I don't know if you could see this. Very simple can, an amazing straw color. It doesn't has just a touch of that, what I think of that earwaxiness to it, but it's just
it's a traditional
drinker.
German style Pilsner or American style?
It is a Oregon version of a traditional German style, we'll say.
There we go. So it was originally a German style. Got it. Yeah, that's the same with this. I mean, this is a German styled Pilsner. It's not your classic American Pilsner. So this one's got like that little bit of a bitter bite on the end of it, like a classic German Pilsner should. And this is nice. It's got a very low aroma. Very, very, very light esters on it. You have to have a better nose than I do to smell them, and some people probably do smell them more than I do. But it's nice. I mean, it is crystal clear, and it's medium carbonation. You can kind of see there's some bubbles coming up. It's not real fast. Has a light head on it that dissipated pretty quickly. It's color wise for the nerds out there, it should be 3 to 4 SRM. Bitterness is a range 20 to 50 IBUs, although I in the last decade have gone with the theory that IBUs are very much a subjective thing. What you might call bitter, I might not. So using IBUs anymore, I think, is kind of an outdated and outmoded type of thing. And ABV should be somewhere between 4.5 and 5.5 on one of these.
And this is a 4.9 ABV.
Oh, look at there, right in the middle.
So this is a recent discovery for me, and I apologize for the sin. I didn't think to grab a glass before I came in and hooked up, so I'm going.
Hey man, you drink how you want to drink. You want? I've said this many times before, and I'll probably say it many times again. A good beer is a good beer, no matter how you drink it. It's just going to be better in the proper glass or at the proper temperature.
True enough. You can really spoil a beer by when there's a couple of places that they brag about how cold they serve their beer, and you go to taste it and there's no flavor. You have to let it sit on your table for like 20, 30 minutes to get it to a temperature where things start to open up.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's very much like a carryover from the American macro beer scene. Because, like your Millers and your Coors and your Buds, they're designed to be served super cold because they don't have a lot of flavor to begin with, and two, when they warm up, they still don't have a lot of flavor. But what flavor they do have tends to get a little bit skunky and a little bit off-putting. So they serve them as cold as possible, so that they serve the purpose of you drinking them and quenching your thirst.
And you don't notice everything that's wrong with them. They're not
right.
horrible, but they are what they are.
I mean, the big macro beers, nothing against them. They're making their product, and they're doing it in a very scientific method. So, you can take a batch today and a batch next week and a batch 3 months down the road, put them next to each other, and you won't be able to tell the difference between them because, very, very scientific in their methods, and they've got a product that they've got that their consistency down, and that's their thing. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with that, but that's just not the beer that I want to drink.
Well, have you ever seen, I think it was on Prime, they had this, what looked like a beer brew off, and it was technically, but it was a documentary that went through it. And it turned out they were all Budweiser brewers from around the world going for basically the perfect Budweiser batch. In other words, having your numbers be just so what they were, that you were the most consistent brewer in the company. And these were the top 5 in the world, apparently. I watched like 2 episodes and goes, this could be soul killing, so I better walk away from this.
Right, right. No doubt. You know, I don't know. You know, I've always been one of those people that, you know, like most people who got into craft beer for a while there, I was like, oh no, you got to drink craft. You got to drink craft. And I came back around to the theory of drink what you like. If you like the macros, drink the macros, but just don't be afraid to step outside of your normal comfort zone and try something else, which is what the whole point of this show is, to try and get people to say, oh, you know, you like Bud? Well, you might like this because it's a Pilsner, you know, it's got a little bit more flavor. It might have a little more bite than you used to, and you don't serve it as cold, but it's in the same vein, basically. So you might give this a try. And if you like that, you might like this and suggest something else to people, you know. It's all about just trying to broaden people's horizons.
So you're drinking a localish Pils over there. And I'll admit, it's not one I'm probably going to see in the state of Idaho.
Probably not.
But and I'm drinking the Oregon one. Can I throw out a few of my faves?
Hey, you tell. Yeah, I mean that's what the show's about. Shout out to your favorite breweries and favorite styles of beers.
So my 2 favorite straight up German Pils, because I can get them on a fairly regular basis: Bitburger, Veltons. So, and I know that's probably just because they are probably the macroist of the bunch, and I can get them. So Terminal Gravity right now out of Oregon, and I'm trying to remember what city they're in. When I can find a 6-pack of their Pilsner, I clear the shelf, because you can't get it very often, and it is so well balanced. It's about perfect. Freem is really, really solid. Here in Idaho, the best one I have found, and unfortunately they have pulled it off the shelf, and I don't think they're bringing it back because it was a collaboration with the Birds of Prey preserve out here. They had a Peregrine Pilsner, and I won't say it was an award winner, but I was about once a week. I was driving 30, 40 miles to just go pick up from the brewery so I could have a couple 6-packs in the fridge.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's a testament to the beer. If you're willing to drive, you know, 30, 40 miles, and for those of us that live in the world of kilometers, that is 50 to 75 kilometers. That's quite a haul just to go grab some beer.
And that's because I didn't shout them out, but a local brewery that goes by the name of Mad Swede. And
nice.
Now they have a really neat little tasting room on the far side of Boise, and then they have a nice downtown pub atmosphere. Give me the little tasting room back by the original brewery every day of the week. It has basically a slanted shuffleboard because it's been beat up so bad. Just a little simple vibe. People are in there to have a beer and visit. There's no pretension of why you're there, and I love it.
Yeah, you know, and that's some of my favorite places are like that. We've got a few, you know, like where I live. Within 20 minutes of me, there are, I think, 6 breweries, and if I go, say, out an hour, there's probably 20, and if I go out an hour and a half distance from me, there's probably 60. You know, you can't really throw a stick around here without hitting a craft brewery, which is great for people like me. But I'm the same way. I would prefer the ones that have the smaller, less ostentatious style. Just give me a little tasting room off the side of where you're making the beer, and I'm perfectly happy. But having said that, one of my favorite locals is one called Flux, and they converted I believe it was an old horse barn into their brewery, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's this big open space, and it's got big garage doors that look over one of their retention ponds on their property, and it's amazing. But again, you know, the seating capacity in the place is probably, I think, 40 people inside, and if they have the patio going, that's another probably 40 or 50. So even fully maxed out, it's like 100 people. So it's not big to begin with.
No. And you know, once you get that size, that feels plenty big. But if it could
Yeah.
still have a good vibe about it, that's what you need. Just a good place to sit down. And I don't care about loud music. I don't care about any of that. About trivia nights are fun at the right time. But basically, I'm looking to go try something new, kick back with a buddy, and talk.
Yep. Yeah, and if they happen to have food, great. Or if there's a food truck in the parking lot, great. If they don't, that's fine too.
You can always move on.
That's right. You can always go get food later.
Oh,
so for people who might be interested, in a traditional German style Pilsner, you should have a fairly moderate to quite obvious hop profile in the beer. And it'll come through in the bitterness at the end, but you will get some of that floral from the hops in the flavor in the middle of the beer. And it should be sweet, and there should be like a residual sweetness and some aroma that you get when you bring it up to your face that lets you know this is going to be a fairly sweet beer up front. It should be, it should be bready, kind of biscuity, things like that. So, if it's not bready or biscuity, then you better talk to the brewer and ask them what it was they did to change the recipe.
Well, this one has, they advertise it as having the fresh scents of flower and tart lemony zest with a touch of honey and crisp, spicy finish. I don't get as much of that because it tastes more. I get that little bit of yeast, that little bit of bitterness, and that's what's forward for me when I taste this.
Yeah, and that's typical. I mean, unless you've got one of those really well trained palates, you're probably not going to pick out a lot of that stuff. And even the biscuit flavors, you're going to be hard pressed in a lot of German Pilsners to pick out a biscuit flavor because it's just going to be a light kind of floral flavor that you're getting in the beer, and that biscuity maltiness will be the back end of it, and it'll just be just a tiny bit towards the middle and end. So,
and you get about, let's say, 80 degrees, and I'll let you do the conversion for me again because my ignorance is showing.
That's 30 degrees.
We you get a nice day outside, and you sit outside with a nice Pils, and it is just so refreshing.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, to be fair though, I am the guy who sits out on the patio when it is like 85, 90 degrees Fahrenheit with the barrel aged Imperial Stout, just because that's my favorite style of beer. And I love the high ABV, the double digit beers and things like that, and I drink them year round. I have a constant argument with my wife that anything less than a 10 ABV, 10% ABV stout is a session stout. And she's like, there's no such thing as a session stout.
That's a good, there's a reason to found a brewery right there. Then you could just put out stouts and call them session stouts, and then bring out the big beer.
Right. Yeah. So I enjoy drinking heavy beers year round, but you're right. A nice Pilsner, a well done lager of any sort.
Yes.
On a hot day, sitting out on a patio or sitting out in the yard with friends, having a cookout, it's always a good choice because one, it's light, so you can drink more of them, and two, they're really refreshing.
Sitting back by the fire, having a cold beer.
Yep.
Nothing better.
Nothing better than that. A few of my favorites. Firestone Walker makes one called Pivo Pils. Absolutely phenomenal Pilsner beer. Snake River Brewing has one called Paintbrush Pilsner, or at least they used to. I don't know if they do anymore.
I forgot about that because that's a good one.
Yeah, and then Victory Brewing, they have what is theirs? Prima Pils is a decent Pilsner as well. If you're looking, because I'm not dumb. I'm in Canada. Used to live in the States, so I know a lot of people that watch my show are in the States. So try and talk to breweries and examples in the States. If you're coming up here into the Canadian area, like I said, this one here, Junction, this craft Pilsner is absolutely fantastic. So if you're ever in the Toronto area, pick some up.
I'll have to. I'm hoping to be back up there. The last time I went, I've only been to Canada twice, and I've only been within like 8 miles of the border because we went up there and camped. Oh, I'm trying to think of the name of the town right now. Of course, I can forget about it now, but because it was
It'll come to you at like 2:00 in the morning.
Oh, yeah. So we went, and my buddy and I went and did the brewery tour in there, and it was because he was a huge fan of Kokanee Gold, and they discontinued it in the States when they got bought out. So we went over, we got some, we brought it back. About 2 years later, just before COVID, we went over, and we were all up in Spokane for the 4th of July. Our wives were doing something. So he and I jumped in the car and literally drove to Canada on a Kokanee Gold beer run.
So if you were in Spokane, then you must have gone up into BC then.
Yep. And trying to remember, and I'm just blanking the name of the town, because you cross the border, and within 4 minutes of the border, you're pulling into town. And
yeah.
So, and then the breweries,
I mean, that describes 90% of Canada, my friend.
It was a good time. It was a great excuse to get away, because we small kids, adult beer run,
right?
I'm not going to complain. God, I love my wife, but a little time to just go run away and go get beer. Awesome.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing wrong with that at all. So if you said you have your podcast and you cover a wide variety of subjects, if people want to find you out on the internet, what's the name of your podcast?
My podcast is the Strive, Seek, Find podcast. We are basically life lessons and bite-sized lifestyle PD, figuring out a better way to live your life. You can find me at chancewhitmore.com, on Twitter at chancewhitmore5. I have a great little Facebook group if you like to get involved in the conversation and discuss kind of what I bring up. Like this week, it was me being a science enthusiast talking about the idea of nuclear-powered rockets, because NASA's getting ready to test some nuclear thrusters in 2027.
Yep.
The next week is me talking about decision making and not making things personal when having interpersonal conflicts, because and using an example from my career where I literally end up with someone was upset with me, and to be passive aggressive, they created variations on my name, and I ended up making an entire law firm card with the variations on Whitmore they used when addressing my boss. It's supposed to be fun, but it's supposed to be educational, because it's in my DNA. I'm an educator, so there's always got to be, doesn't always have to be, but because of how I'm wired, most of the time there's supposed to be a lesson that comes out of it. So come in, join the discussion, strive, seek, find, check it out. 15 minutes of your time most of the time.
Excellent. And yeah, like I said, if you're on the Facebooks, hit them up. I am not on Facebook. I gave up Facebook several years ago. I'm barely on Twitter these days, and I'm on Mastodon most of the time, just because I've discovered that I found a community of beer people over there that's absolutely fantastic, and I still talk to the beer folks on Twitter, but I found I'm spending a lot more of my time over on Mastodon, where there are no algorithms and there's no ads and things like that. It's kind of nice.
And I haven't got on there yet because, Al, I figured one more thing. I don't do my personal Facebook. The only thing I really keep going is the podcast group.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my interaction right now. Twitter, I try to do something with it, but let's be honest, that it is designed that in such a way that you're not getting traction.
Yeah, I mean, well, unless you're planning on or trying to have your career be social media content, keeping track of more than say one or two social media platforms and trying to keep up on them is tough. I mean, like I use a tool called Buffer to help me schedule out my posts on Twitter and on Mastodon, just because it's easy to put it in one time and have it post to both places for me. But having trying to keep track of say Facebook and Twitter and Mastodon and Instagram, and now you've got your TikTok and all that stuff. If you're trying to do all of it, plus you're living a regular life on top of that, it eats up a big chunk of your time.
Yeah, that's not where this is supposed to be fun and diverting.
Yep.
It's if I ever get to the point where I hate what I'm doing, I'm out. Life is too short. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I was actually just having that conversation with a friend of mine via Discord earlier today, and he's like, if you're doing it for a hobby, when it's no longer fun, that's your signal to stop doing it. And I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. When it stops being fun, when it stops being something that you like doing, if you're not trying to make a living at it, stop doing it.
Yeah, there's no, and let's be honest, from that, you can possibly make a little bit more from I think the video end than the podcasting end. Podcasting is great because anybody can get their content out there. And if you really hustle, maybe you can make a little bit.
Yep.
Hustle the merch, hustling that. Podcasting's cost me a lot more than it'll ever make for me. And that's okay because I'm enjoying doing it.
That's why it's called a hobby.
Exactly.
Yeah. And same thing, in our conversation we were having earlier today. I said, we've either hit the top or just gone over the top of the bell curve of where being a content provider, an independent content provider on YouTube or whatever for a profession. I think we've gone over that curve and we're on the backside of it now. So it's really tough if you're trying to do it now. It's not like the early days where those first people to start doing it got in at the right time and were able to build large audiences. Now there's so many people on so many different platforms that it's really tough. I mean, it's really tough if you're trying to make that your profession, and you really got to work hard at it. And you got to understand that it's not going to be easy. You're not entitled to doing that as a living. That is something you have to have that entrepreneurial spirit and really work at.
And eventually you have to understand whatever maybe helped you climb that ladder is going to be the same thing that ends it for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, if you're going to be a content provider and you want to do it as a profession, you're going to have to chase the trends. And being an old gray-haired man, I do not have that kind of energy, nor do I have that kind of drive anymore. I do this because I like it, and I want to try and get people to understand and try different things that they might not try out on their own.
Agreed. Good. And for me, that's the difference between I turned over a new decade this winter. I went to the 50s.
Hey, welcome to the club.
And what I've decided, it's quite a club. I think the secret handshake is back pain, but that's beside the point. The for me, always in my head, I have said the difference between becoming complete get off my lawn guy, which I am admittedly wired a little bit to, and staying young mentally is the willingness to have the flexibility to go out and explore and try new things.
Yep. No, you're right. I mean, I've never been the get off my lawn guy. I've always been the get off my lawn unless you're going to help me mow it later.
That's a better attitude. I might be the one. I asked I had a rough week at work a few months ago, and I said, so I want to put up the barbed wire, and I want the machine gun emplacements here, here, and here. And if you don't have the passcode, the auto guns kick on. And my wife just rolls her eyes. She knows that I'm kidding, but she just rolls her eyes, and off we go. And but I was just at that state. I'd hit my point where my people meter was overloaded, so I had to drop it back off before I could get back out there.
Yeah, that was another conversation I was having not that long ago with my wife and a couple of friends. Was the whole pandemic with everybody basically being shut-ins for the last few years. Everyone's social stamina has really gone down. You know, I used to be the guy that I'd be out talking to people all the time, glad handing and yucking it up with anybody and everybody in the bars and things like that. And I found that, since that hasn't been my norm for the last 3 years, when we go out, I get peopled out pretty quick these days. I'm used to I got used to that nice quiet lifestyle. Now you go out and you're dealing with other people, and by the time you get home, you're like, I'm fucking exhausted.
I'm done. I'm going to go curl up in the corner and turn on some mindless movie and just call it a day.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's for a lot of people, I think it's going to be a while before they've built back up to that, having the pre-pandemic social stamina that they used to have. I mean, for some people, obviously they'll hop right back into it like it's no big deal. But I think for a majority of people, it won't be that way.
Oh no, I don't know if I'll ever I get out there and try stuff, but I don't know if I'll, I notice I throw a lot less parties for more than 20 people at my house now, because they're in my space. It's
right.
Exhausting. Now
it is. Yeah.
5 to 10 people, no problem. Get them over here. Let's have a barbecue. That bigger group, I just start about 2 hours in. I'm going, go to the happy place. Go to the happy place. Yeah. Yeah. 20 people is about my limit these days. I think if we're having people over, I'd be much happier with 5 or 10, but 20 would still be doable. It's about the limit. Any more than that, and I'd be like, yeah, no, let's not do this. Nah, there comes a point where it's got to be fun, even hosting, because you can't visit with anybody if you got that many people. And and that's basically what it is. For me, it's getting out there and visiting with people and seeing how they're doing, seeing what's going on with them, telling old jokes, telling new jokes, and making each other just a little bit, how to put it, giving each other a little bit of shit, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's what friends are for. All right, my buddy Chance here. We've been talking for 37 minutes, and this is the part of the show I go, hey, this is the end of the show. So if you've got any last minute shout outs, this is the time to put them out. Again, if people are looking to find you out on the socials, where can they find you?
You can find me over at Facebook on the Strive Seek Find group on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter at Chance Whitmore 5. You can find my podcast with all fine purveyors of podcasts. Beyond that, that's got it. I just appreciate the opportunity to sit down and visit with you, my friend.
Yeah, not a problem. All right. Until next time, I am Rob from the internet. Cheers.